Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good following morning. This is AMA number 44. 44, a number I always liked. When I was a little kid, I loved Reggie Jackson. Growing up in the 70s in New York, being a Yankee fan, got that from my dad, although I grew up in Queens, a big Yankee fan, and 1970s Yankee fan meant Reggie Jackson. So number 44, Reggie. So I always like 44. Today's number 44. Also, President Barack Obama, 44. Very good president today. And it's January 21st. So excited for the AMA. Some good stuff to talk about today. I have a very, very interesting guest who's a friend of mine, supremely cool woman, Ambassador Urszula Gacek, who has done many, many cool things, including recently was an observer for essentially for the organization here in Europe for observer of the American elections. So we'll hear about that. Whether there was widespread cheating. I think we know the answer to that, which is obviously no fucking way. But anyway, we will talk to somebody who did that profession as an actual project of hers, and what that means to monitor an election like that in the US, and lots of other things that she did. So Jeffrey Rolad, good morning, my brother. Hello, how are you? Benji, has everyone signed up for the global challenge? We will talk about that. You like the 5 o'clock shadow? Am I gonna sing Faith? I will say, if I was gonna sing, I won't sing Faith, Benji, but I might try to reenact the greatest video of all time, Freedom by George Michael. Sita, hi Sita. My dad is watching. He got his first vaccine. Excellent, Dad. Happy to hear that you got your vaccine, Dad. Saul says, when friends have celebrated their 44th birthday, you said happy Reggie Jackson birthday. Exactly. On my 44th birthday, I remember on Facebook, I posted a photo just from the back of Reggie Jackson with the number. So I always like number 44. Next week, actually, yeah, Avi, beard. Actually, here, I'll give you the lowdown on the beard. So generally these days, I sort of have been only shaving more or less once a week, my head and my face. And yesterday I shaved my head and I was like, I'll leave the face since I just do the whole thing with the razor. So I left one. So we have to see see what we like, because I really want to be an Orthodox Jew, Jeffrey. Well, Rabbi Avi would say, in many ways, I am an Orthodox Jew. Good morning, Marcel. Good morning from Montreal. Marcel Zielinski, how are you today? Marcel, you are very much on our minds as we prepare to do the walk, the Marcel walk, walking in Marcel's footsteps. And we're going to talk about this in a minute. Very rabbinic. Jerry would be proud. You hear that, Jerry? Jerry's watching, actually. We can see Sita. You can let me know what my dad thinks of the beard. If he thinks that I look more religious. It's never too late, Dad, as you're always telling me. It is never too late for me to see the light, as it were, and have my, and you'll pardon my expression, come to Jesus moment. In this case, it wouldn't be Jesus, but okay, yeah. So I don't know. You guys liking the bit? I'm not sure. At this point, the two women in my life, Kasha and Ola, my assistant, seem to like it. So that's it's staying for now, but we'll see. I'm sure it'll getting a little itchy and I'll get bored of it, and I'm sure get rid of it soon. But for now, it's there. So big news, of course, the election. But before that, Poland. What's going on with the vaccine, with the virus? We have vaccinated 600,000 people in Poland, which is good. Very happy that they've started to vaccinate. It's not that fast a tempo. I'd like that to speed up. As of now, medical professionals, and they've started with seniors. There are 1.7 million Poles over the age of 80, and only I think only 700,000 of that 1.7 have signed up for the vaccine. So it's not good. We need to make sure that our seniors know that they should be vaccinated, and that it's safe, and that the alternative is getting sick and maybe being passing away from it. So let's encourage everybody to get vaccinated, including our seniors here, and let's try to make sure that people can get vaccinated as fast as possible. Poland move that forward a little bit if you can. Hopefully that'll do. But I see lots of these days people in Israel. Even Benji has been vaccinated. I see people in the U.S. Not only my dad, but the eternally young Jeffrey Rolat vaccinated. Marcel, I think you're getting vaccinated soon, if I remember, in Montreal. So let's hope the world is moving forward and getting people vaccinated. So yeah, what a great day yesterday. What a day. It's been 4 years. That's like 1,400 days we've waited for something like this for over 1,400 days. Just a beautiful, I thought a beautiful, tasteful, classy ceremony. I loved Biden's speech. I didn't think he went really for the highlight. He was very much himself. He wasn't sort of going for any type of highfalutin language that's not very Biden. He's not the orator of a Barack Obama or of a Kennedy, but he stayed in his wheelhouse. I thought it was a speech from the heart. They say that his speechwriters are people that have been with him for a while and know him well. I think that's absolutely the case. I really thought it was just a great speech. That was a highlight. Amanda Gorman, that youth poet laureate or something, that was absolutely unbelievable. I thought that was just a phenomenal poem that she read. I couldn't believe it. She had such presence, stood up there in the bright yellow coat. She was phenomenal. What a poem. That was amazing seeing that. I liked the speech, the benediction that the preacher gave. I thought it was nice that he said sort of whatever your faith, he included there, which is not usually what people say. They usually just say, Jesus or, Hashem or something. I thought he was very inclusive. I liked what he said. Lady Gaga, great. She was wearing, I thought it was so cool. She had that giant sort of dove pin that she was wearing. She looked really cool, sounded great. J-Lo, strange. I was a little surprised by Garth Brooks in the beginning, but liked to see him. I think they went for, to make sure that Middle America was represented, or the South, with Garth Brooks. So yeah, her name Jeffrey, I said, yeah, Amanda Gorman. Saul says that he loved the black police officer who was a hero at the Capitol, was picked to escort VP Harris. Absolutely, just a wonderful day. At the end, since of course Trump decided to boycott the inauguration, which was just really, I think that's not going to help. I mean, I don't know who's judging him well at this point in any sense, but that's not going to help his legacy. And seeing Vice President Harris and her husband see off the Pences, I thought was just looked good. And so nothing, we've heard it. You don't need me to say it, but nothing is more important in the idea of a democracy than the peaceful transition of power. And besides everything else that Trump has done, which is to me treasonous, and if you want to take that treason, you want to take that seriously, then the punishment for treason is what it is, and I think that should be the case. But I don't want to talk too much about that. But this idea of boycotting the inauguration and all this, just you look like a petulant child. So happy to see that Vice President Pence, although disagree with him in just about everything, he did the right thing, validated the election and the votes, and was there, stood there smiling and joking with the Harrises, or the Emhoffs, or Emhoff Harris family, or the Vice President and her and First Gentleman, however we put it. It's interesting to sort of get used to the language, where it's something that's kind of new for us. But what a great day for America! What a necessary day, in the sense that it was just wonderful watching Barack Obama stand there as the first African American to be elected president and to be inaugurated. It was wonderful to see Kamala Harris as the first South Asian person of South Asian descent, Black woman, to be vice president. To see her with her husband, who's Jewish. I thought it was just a family that in many ways represents America, and that yesterday was all that was good in America was on display yesterday. And it was very nice. In some sense, of course, you're proud of your background and proud of who you are, but it's been a very difficult 4 years for, I think, for many of us, in terms of our feelings about our American citizenship. And it was very good to feel. It felt nice to exhale and to feel good about the country that holds such promise, or has held such promise, and continues to hold such promise for many. So it was just a wonderful day. I think there were some lines in the poem. I don't remember. I don't have it in front of me right now. But just this idea of it not a failure, but as a sort of a work in progress, I think is really a beautiful idea, and something that will resonate with me for a while. So that was that. It's nice. Wow, yay! Thank God. You know what? I don't say thank God that often, and when I say it, I mean it not in such a literal sense, but in any way you want to take it. Thank God the democracy was tested. It got to the point of a few different doors breaking, and the police not doing what they did. We could be in a very different state, and the democracy held. So good for you, USA, and proud to be an American after yesterday. In terms of what's going on, got to talk about, again, Ride for the Living, big banner here behind me. We are doing something very, very special this year, the Global Challenge. We're inviting people in June to walk, ride, or run, or whatever you want to do, 60 miles, so the distance from Auschwitz to the JCC. I am doing that walk on next week, January 27th, to honor my friend and my hero, Marcel Zielinski, who walked it 76 years ago. Ryan Kaplan, who works here with me, and Kasha are going to join me. The three of us are going to do the walk. It's not going to be easy. We will suffer and complain a little bit during it, but it's important for us to be able to honor Marcel. And also, by doing it, we until that date, until the 27th, until next Wednesday, when we walk, everybody who signs up for the June Global Challenge, again, it's free to sign up. There's no fundraising commitment. It takes 2 minutes to sign up. Anybody who signs up, we will receive $18 donation in that person's name. So in your name, or your friend's name, or your family, whoever may be watching, we'd love if you could spread the word. It's money that you can help generate for us, that with no cost to you, just a couple minutes. And then in June, just move a little bit, 2 miles a day or so, 1.5 miles a day is not too much. We walk that much every day generally. So we'd love to get you to, we'd love you to sign up. It's something that we think is important for us. We think that's important for people to be able to commemorate Auschwitz and the Holocaust in that way. So January 27th is International Holocaust Day, Holocaust Remembrance Day, the day the Soviets liberated the camp. It was the day our friend Marcel Zielinski was freed, and then he made his way back to Krakow to eventually reuniting with his mother, and was able to pick up his life from then. And we want to honor Marcel, who's become so much of such a part of our community and such an inspiration to so many of us. We want to honor Marcel by going to Auschwitz, driving out there, and then taking the day and walking back in his honor, and doing it, as we say, in Marcel's footsteps. So please, if you haven't signed up yet, sign up, sign up, and get your friends to sign up. And by doing so, everybody in their name everybody who signs up will have an $18 donation made in their name to JCC Krakow to help us take care of our Holocaust survivors, as we're really trying to do. Saul, the weather, Jeffrey asked about the weather. Agnieszka Gish put the registration link in there. If you wanna, if you can click there, you can sign up. If you haven't done it yet, it takes 2 minutes. Jeffrey's praying for a lot of wind and snow. Jeffrey Rollout, I get you an electric bike for the bicycle ride, and you pray for wind and snow as I walk? Really, Jeffrey? Not nice. Saul is saying 6 feet of snow predicted. Thank you, Saul. Sebastian, 33 and a bit of snow. That sounds more like it. 33, unfortunately, Fahrenheit and not Celsius. I wouldn't mind walking in 33 Celsius, but we'll do it. I should remind everyone, Robert Desmond and I did it a few years ago. Once we survived it. I'm still here, and Robert did it a couple times since then, and he was all right. I of course did it when I was much younger, I think 47, 48. So as a 51-year-old, as a bearded, on my way to Hasidic 51-year-old, it will be a challenge, but I'm happy that I'm able to do it with my friend Ryan, who's been a great addition to our JCC team here. Ryan representing Atlanta, our Director of External Relations, and of course with my amazing wife Kasha, who doesn't need to train, could probably wake up in the middle of the night, put on slippers and walk 60 miles. She's just one of those naturally super fit people. So I'm counting on Kasha to help me get through it, maybe help me and Ryan. So there's that. We're very excited. So please get your friends to sign up. I can't repeat it enough. It would mean a lot for us. We have about 400 people already who have signed up for it, and we're really hoping to get to 1,000. If we get to 1,000 people by next week, we will get a bonus. So we'll get a large donation will be made to us if we hit 1,000. So if you can put it out there and get your friends, pester your friends to do it. Remember, it's easier to take 2 minutes and sign up, and it's easier even to pester your friends and family to take 2 minutes to sign up than it is to walk 60 miles in January in Poland in one day. So not to guilt you into doing it, but I am trying to guilt you into doing it. So with no further ado, I have the great honor of introducing my friend, somebody who I think Cheryl Fishbein maybe introduced me to years ago, but who I've known has become a friend, somebody I really admire, Ambassador Urszula Gacek. She's a former senior diplomat in the Polish Foreign Ministry, Poland's permanent representative to the Council of Europe. She was the Consul General in New York. She keyed the Committee of the Ministers' Rapporteur Group on Democracy in Strasbourg. She was most recently, which I think is very interesting, the head of the mission as an observer for the recent November election in the U.S. For the Council of Europe, for the OSCE, which is the Organization of Security. Oops, you'll correct me. The OSCE. I'm always bad with my things. She was born in the UK, has a degree in philosophy, politics, and economics from the University of Oxford. Those of us in the know like to call that the PPE degree. And it's my great, what an honor to welcome you, Ambassador Gacek. So hi, Ula.
Hi, hello, Jonathan. It's such a pleasure to see you, albeit over Zoom, which is the new way of reaching out and talking to friends, but not just you so close in Krakow, but hopefully also a wonderful opportunity to say a big hello and send big hugs to all my friends in New York who, because of COVID, I wasn't able to visit during my recent trip to Washington. I was hoping to stay on a few days, go to New York, catch up with old friends, and sadly not possible. But thanks to the wonders of technology, I can sit here in my kitchen in rural southern Poland and talk to the world with your assistance. So I'm all yours. Ask me anything, as the title of the talk is.
I know people never ask me that many questions in the whole. I think I ran out of questions for me after like the first week, and I'm week 44. But before anything, there's one thing I didn't mention, and I want to kind of show you, and actually a package. And you're besides your many other talents, you are amazing at timing, because just literally an hour ago, these two bottles, I'm going to try to show, came to my office. Besides your senior diplomatic talents and history, you are a vinegar maker.
Yeah, there's absolutely no alcohol in there.
I received these two beautiful bottles of vinegar, and I'm going to talk to you. I want to get to that, and I want to first of all thank you. That was incredibly thoughtful of you. And I already, Kasha, my wife, is already very excited. She's sort of the chef, and I showed her, she was going crazy about it. So thank you for that. And I want to talk to you about the vinegar, and I want to talk to you about the recent elections and about being the Consul General, and get there a little bit. But first of all, a little bit about your history. You're born in the UK.
Yep.
To Polish family.
Polish immigrants. My father was a World War II veteran, and the part of Poland he came from, which was the far northeast of pre-war Poland, well, there was nowhere to go back to. And also because he had been a soldier in the army of General Anders, he was considered to be a traitor by the communist regime. So he actually didn't dare to go back to visit Poland until the 1970s. My mother was 21 years younger than him and came over to the United Kingdom in the early 1960s. And well, as they say, the rest is history. But I had the privilege of being raised in two languages, in two cultures. I went to a very strict school run by Irish Catholic nuns. That's quite an experience, but they made a very diligent and punctual person out of me, if nothing else. And I lived in the United Kingdom until 1991. And in 1990,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to, because maybe before we get to Poland, I have just a question about your family. So you grew up with a family of, your father was in Anders army, which sort of, people, if you're watching, this is sort of like it's like coming over. It's a bit of like saying, oh, my family is from the Mayflower. It's like this sort of idea of so having served in something that's very prestigious, in terms of Poland. What was the attitude toward Poland growing up in your house? Now, you grew up with two languages, so obviously there was this strong connection to Poland, but was it in terms of their view of like, oh, Poland is just going through this communist period and eventually it's going to end, or, oh, it's longing for the homeland that we're distant from because of communism? Like, what was the general, what did you grow up feeling toward, or get from your parents toward Poland?
Well, we definitely hated the regime. There was no doubt about that. Yeah. But also, I had in this sort of Polish-British cultural mix, there was one other element apart from these rather strict Irish Catholic nuns, and that is that every Saturday I attended a Polish Saturday school, and the teachers in that school were sort of really old generation Poles. I mean, many of them came from aristocracy. My Polish language teacher, her father had been the right-hand man of Anders. I mean, he had been the number 2. So these were people who came from, people who had an incredible sense of history, of culture, of Polish statehood. And all of this, made us, I think, in many ways, more patriotic than some of my contemporaries in Poland. I also knew much more history than they did, because I was learning sort of history as it really happened. Whereas, my husband Marek, who's 7 years older than me and has never been a big fan of the communist regime either, but, he was only being able to learn about sort of the real history of Poland, about things like capping, things like this, but only through, like sort of underground network from his parents, because this was not something that was taught in schools. So it was an interesting situation that when I actually finally did move to Poland in 1991, I was actually very well prepared, although sort of culturally, I was sort of back in the 1930s. You can imagine the people who taught me, my language was quite archaic and very proper. Nobody ever swore in Polish, and I came to Poland, nobody was swearing around me. So it was, we were very old fashioned and very proper. And sort of we maintained all the traditions. And, I mean, anybody who's ever been ripped apart from their family, taken away from their homeland, because of that yearning to be close to your cultural roots, you really cultivate, you cultivate every holiday, every festival, every kind of, I don't know, Christmas, whatever, Easter, everything was celebrated very properly. And when I actually came to Poland, I thought maybe people were a bit slapdash about some of these things. Yeah. But that's because, I think now if you're away from it, you really try to cultivate it, because otherwise you lose it.
Absolutely. It. I think to some degree, we see that in the Jewish world with Israel, how, maybe, not to get too deep into the religious aspect of it, but, everywhere around the world, and things like Shabbat have kept the Jewish people together. And then you go to Israel and the Israelis are sort of, what? They don't, they don't
have, whatever, it's like late
blessing, right? Blessing over wine or over bread. They're like, what's that? Again, I'm generalizing, but just because it's not right, they don't need that so much to keep them connected to the homeland, because they're living there. Was there an idea among your parents, do you remember? I mean, that this is just something temporary, that the people will sort of rise up, or the world will change and communism will end, and that you were sort of in this holding pattern? Or was there an idea that this is just the way it's going to be, and we have this land that we're disconnected from?
I mean, I think for many years there wasn't much hope, really. And then when Solidarity, the 81, where suddenly, like, it seemed that actually something was possible. Something was actually possible. And there were those, I just started my studies at Oxford then, and then became very involved in the Oxford University Polish Society and supporting Solidarity. And I've got a big fat file somewhere, probably as in some communist archive, as being an arch troublemaker. We were doing demos in Oxford, in London. And then, and then martial law came, and suddenly you thought, I mean, it's like curtains. This was, 2 years where we thought nothing was going to happen, but this was just terrible. And then slowly again, things began to move in the right direction. And by 1990, I was, I already graduated. I'd already started working in the United Kingdom. My Polish-born husband had moved to the United Kingdom, and we were living in just outside Oxford together. And it was really strange because he had come to the conclusion that he had a really excellent job. He's an automotive engineer. He was working for a prestigious car manufacturer in charge of overseas markets, traveling most of the time to the Far East. So, he wasn't sort of washing dishes, as like some Poles who literally go and very often, sadly, are working below their qualifications. But he was thinking about coming back. When we had the prospect of the first free elections, he was thinking about coming back. And I was thinking it actually might be fun to move here. And we had this really strange conversation where one day we sat down and I said, I want to tell you something. And he said, you first. And I said, no, you first. And he said, I've got this crazy idea, but you'll never agree to it. And I said, okay, what's your crazy idea? He said, my crazy idea is we move to Poland. I said, my crazy idea is we move to Poland, but I thought you'd never want to give up your, great job in the UK. And so we made the decision in 1990. Our daughter Helena was tiny. She was a baby then. By the time we moved, she was 3. Then we had Henry 6 years later. And the interesting thing is most of my kids are also dual nationals, but brought up in Poland. They never said to me, why did you do that? You did us a disservice by moving here. And despite everything, and despite maybe the recent kind of politics of Poland, which are really, really, I find very difficult sometimes to deal with, there's still not a day where I think I wish I'd never moved to Poland, especially when I look at what they've done with Brexit UK, that it kind of reaffirms that like there's nowhere to run almost. So I'm here, and I'm here for good.
And was that when you moved here with Mark, with your husband? And that's an amazing story that you both had this idea, but that at the same, or both had this large thing that you wanted to share with each other, and it was the same. Had you been to visit before?
Oh yes, I mean, I came from the age of 2. Literally, I spent every summer holiday here. Wow. So I was, but it was, I used to come here, and I would have hard currency, and I would take all my cousins to anybody who lived in Poland in those days. There were these hard currency stores called Pevex, where you could buy Toblerones and things like that. So I was very popular because I had loads of money by their standards, and I could buy things in this store. But the interesting thing is that actually when we actually physically moved, it was the end of August 1991, and the road going east was empty because most people were fleeing west. It was the day that Yeltsin was standing on a tank outside the Duma.
I was going to say summer of 91, yeah.
Yes, summer of 91. We thought, this was a very fragile, very fledgling democracy in Poland. And we were sort of traveling here thinking, are we going to have to turn back and, move back with this small baby that we've got under our arm, sort of thing. But I think we came prepared for much worse. I mean, in terms of like everyday life, we were just discussing this yesterday with Marek. And when we came, we said, oh, don't worry, we'll go to Vienna. We'll do our shopping in Vienna. And then, and then suddenly the shops were full of stuff in Poland. Suddenly life literally day by day, week by week became normal, So I never looked back. I never compared. I never said, oh, this is how it's done in the UK. Yeah, well, things were different. There were things that were there that were good and bad. Likewise with Poland. But as I said, I threw in my lot with Poland really seriously. Now it will be 30 years, unbelievable 30 years this summer. And one thing is certain, I think had I stayed, I would have never had the opportunities, and you wouldn't be reading out that bio that you were reading out, with because in many ways I was quite unique. There was still not so many people with Polish roots, fluent English speakers, educated in the West, having some business experience in the West. So I had a really big advantage, even on the job market. I was always, and also because I was a woman living in provincial southern Poland, I was always like picked. I mean, for example, USAID had this big program in the United States. It was 1999. And everybody who applied were men from Warsaw or big cities. And for gender balance, they desperately, desperately needed some woman, preferably from the provinces. So they were so pleased when I applied. And then they said, but, how's your English? I said it to these Americans, I said, it's passable. It's okay. I'll manage. And I had an amazing experience. I was actually in Pennsylvania and in Kentucky. And then, of course, like several years later, I'm back in Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania is part of my consular district. And now this autumn, this fall that's just passed, Pennsylvania, what am I doing? Like hotspot for these elections, all eyes on Pennsylvania, all eyes on the Electoral College in Pennsylvania. So this US theme has also sort of been running through my life for more than just the few years I spent, the few short years I spent in New York as Consul General.
I think that if you didn't, you say, oh, what you would have done if you hadn't left, that here you had more. I think you'd probably be the prime minister in the UK right now, and we wouldn't have had. Wouldn't have had Brexit. You could have saved us, Ulla. You could have saved us all.
No, I would have never joined the Bullingdon Club, you see, because that was full of like upper class British guys.
Now, what did your parents? I was going to say, what did your parents think about you moving here with Mar? They
thought I was absolutely out of my mind, as did his family. They all thought we were completely crazy. They were actually, I know they were running a book on how long we would last. I think it was ran for about 3 to 6 months. Yeah, well, 30 years later, hey family, guess what? I'm still here.
Yeah, I'm 20 years in country, and strange. But it's been a wonderful 20 years. So how did you get to what is the road to become? I mean, you were with your background, and you said that you were in a sort of unique position with a business background, degree from Oxford, perfect English, and all this. Like, was it just natural? Were you recruited into the diplomatic corps, or did you just sort of say, wait a minute, that probably is a reasonable
no, that was a long. I was first of all in business, and then because I was living in Tarnów in southern Poland, and really there were very few people like me here. I saw something to do with regional development, and I thought, hey, maybe I could help these people. Like, I can just go and maybe use my contacts, or maybe act as an interpreter for them, or just like completely pro bono. So I sort of rolled up at the offices of one of the local politicians and said, hey, I'm here. He said, oh, this is amazing. I said, maybe I can be of some use to you. And it's kind of how I got to know people in politics, at local level, and some members of parliament. Before you've met somebody who's a politician, you tend to be rather in awe of them. And then after a while, I thought I could do that job. And then I thought, oh my God, I really ought to do that job, so that they stop doing that job. So the opportunity arose actually in 2004, when Poland was first joined the European Union, and we first had people running for the European Parliament. So I had a no hope seat, a no hope place on the list. But they thought it would be quite cool to have an Oxford graduate, UK born, on the list. So they put me on the list, and I did quite well. I did better than they had expected. And a year later, there were elections to the Senate, and I won the local election to the Senate. It would not be possible now. It was only possible. I come from a very, very right-wing conservative part of Poland, and I was a member of Civic Platform, which is sort of liberal, centre liberal. So no way. I mean, I wouldn't have a chance in a million of winning a seat here. But there was, can you imagine, between Law and Justice and Civic Platform, there was a kind of not only a non-aggression pact at the time, but they actually were thinking of creating a coalition. So they had this idea that they would not compete against each other for Senate seats. And this actually was what allowed me to secure the seat. And 2 years later, because the term was very short, they had new elections, and I wasn't able to get that seat again, despite the fact that I thought I'd done quite a good job for my district, but I mean, you're not going to win. It's a tough job for a Democrat to win Georgia, but it can be done, as we have just witnessed. But you can imagine that. So what happened was that there was a kind of the incumbent member of the European Parliament became the Minister of Defence, and so they had to put somebody in his place, and they looked to the list, and it's the next person on the list, the next best result, and it was me. So I ended up in the European Parliament. And after that, I decided I really had had enough of Polish politics, and it wasn't anything as vicious. And but I was much more interested in foreign affairs. I was a member of Foreign Affairs Committee. I'd been a member of the EU Affairs Committee. In the European Parliament, I was a member of the EU-US delegation. There you are, the US again. And so I decided not to run in 2009. And an old university friend of mine and a guy who had actually followed me as the president of the Oxford University Polish Society, who I'd reconnected with politically, although we had initially been in different parties, called me and said, hey, maybe you should think about joining my ministry. And that was Radek Sikorski. He was an old Oxford friend. He'd become the foreign minister. So I was a political appointee, I was a political appointee. And he said, he offered me the job of being Consul General in Chicago. And I said, no, I don't want to be Consul General in Chicago. He said, well, I won't give you anything else. And I said, well, that's okay, but I don't want to be Consul General in Chicago. I didn't know what good fun being Consul General is, but New York, of course, also is quite a unique city. So he said, and then he came back to me a couple of weeks later and he said, okay, how would you like to be the ambassador? You've got two choices. You can have Council of Europe in Strasbourg, multilateral diplomacy, lots of treaties, lots of negotiations, or you can have a quiet life in Luxembourg. I said, no, give me Strasbourg. He said, yeah, that's fine. You really can't mess it up in Strasbourg. Well, Jonathan, you can mess it up everywhere in diplomacy. But so I went to Strasbourg with no experience as a diplomat, but I think these were the best years. I really think these were the best years for our permanent representation there. Poland was on a kind of roll. We were really, can you imagine now? Sad to say, but we were really we were the poster child for successful democratic transformation. And in the Council of Europe, with countries with really looking to us, for example, like Moldova, Georgia, Ukraine, it was an amazing time and so much could be done. And it was a really rare privilege to chair this committee on democracy, rapporteur group on democracy. It's the first time it was the first time a Polish ambassador had chaired anything of any meaning in 20 years of Council of Europe membership. So we did a lot of good things there. And I was just settling in for one more year because Sikorski had decided to extend my stay for a further year to a fifth year in Strasbourg, when suddenly he decided that actually he needed me in New York. And he called me and he said, look, I'd like you to go to New York. And I said, yeah, but I was thinking UN, okay. And I said, yeah, but you've just appointed an ambassador to the UN. He said, no, I need somebody for this, consulate. It's enormous. It's tough. It's a really difficult one. It's bigger than, it's 5 times bigger than the job I had before in terms of staff and budget and work. And I said, oh yeah. And it's unusual because it's almost considered to be a step down to be Consul General after you've been an ambassador, unless you get posted to New York. Unless
it's New York, of course. That's why, that's why the mayor of New York is a job that's like considered the most difficult job in the world. Like not the president of the United States, the mayor of New York.
Yeah. So New York is, it's exceptional. And so I said, okay, Radek. I said, well, how much time do I have to think about it? And he said, yeah, well, I'm waiting. So he wanted an immediate, no consultation with my family.
You got it. Come on.
So I thought, okay, who's going to give you a chance to live and work in New York? And I thought, okay, yeah, I'll do it. So then, literally 2 months later, I was I didn't even come back to Poland. I flew straight from Strasbourg via Frankfurt to New York.
And how was tell us about your time in New York. I'm a New Yorker. There, I'm sure many New Yorkers watching. That's a place that of course, very close to my heart, that I miss very much, being in Krakow all the time these days, not getting back. But
I can imagine how much you miss it. It's New York is everything you ever expect it to be. I remember when I was flying out, I'd made myself a Spotify playlist, from Sinatra to, I had all the New York songs, and I was, and then, it wasn't my first trip to New York. I'd been there as a tourist before a couple of times, but that moment when you're coming in from JFK and you come in and you can see for the first time in that early evening the New York skyline, you think, wow, and it is an amazing city. I think for people who don't have the privilege of being, a diplomat there, where you can park anywhere and you have a driver, so I can imagine, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
Difficult to do that, and plus diplomatic immunity. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, but the traffic cops don't really have much time for you.
There's always a war going on from in the New York Post, they're always talking about these diplomats or whatever. But talk about the job. I mean, New York, clearly you fell in love with New York, as one does. Yeah. What were some interesting aspects of the job? I mean, also, I think particularly, from the Jewish point of view, how much of the job is dealing with issues of Poland's reputation in the world, with the anti-Semitism, and you're dealing, not that it's a negative aspect dealing with Jewish stuff, but just that's an outsized, I think in a place like New York, that's a much bigger part of the job than the Chicago consulate, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so much of it is, it's just a vast also factory producing passports for Polish citizens, dealing with citizens' problems, people having just life problems, people dying, people getting sick, people getting arrested. We had one guy on death row, so I had a fantastic team. So my legal staff, my passport staff, my visa staff, they kept me in the loop on, the really difficult cases, sensitive cases, wherever, like kids were involved, wherever, I always knew about those. But, on the day-to-day stuff, it kind of just, rumbled along. So I was really free to focus on, really, I think three things for me were very key. On the Polish side, I was really very much involved in promoting Polish education, having myself been, having had the privilege of getting this Polish education in a Saturday school. It had actually given me these opportunities. So I was very keen for, second generation, even third generation kids in the United States to have this. So we were able to work with, for example, New York City authorities, with the Board of Education, getting a bilingual Polish English kindergarten on Greenpoint, helping kids who were recent immigrants who had poor English or no English spoken at home, because I was also a kid like that. So that was important to me. Then, of course, another side is the amazing cultural side. We had, while I was there, the Polish National Opera opened the season at the Met. These were amazing people. The ballet, the Polish ballet would come. They were fantastic times. But I think the Jewish thing, the Jewish culture, the Jewish cooperation was key. It was so important in that consulate. And like everywhere, I was dealing with people who were indifferent to Polish Jewish matters, people who were really hostile, and they're a challenge. But on the other hand, this was counterbalanced by some people who were amazing. People who, despite sometimes their own very, very sad and tragic experiences themselves, harbored no kind of, there was nothing in their hearts that was against the Polish people. One of those amazing people, this is what really saddens me, because when I knew I would have the mission to the United States, I thought, I'm going to stay on longer, stay and go to New York and just catch up with some old friends. Now that opportunity will hopefully come round again, but for some it's too late, because just a few days, Holocaust survivor dear Dashenka Rittenberg passed. And so, those are the people who I met, who I will not talk to again. And these people were amazing. And so I got to know a lot of the Jewish organizations. I was made to feel so welcome. You know, I was invited into people's homes. I took part in Jewish holidays. I bought myself, I must admit, Barnes and Noble. Very early on, I bought myself The Dummy's Guide to Judaism. It's a very handy book, okay? And so whenever I was invited somewhere and it was like, I don't know, my first Hanukkah, I read everything up, you know, and then I knew, you know, what the meals were, what the celebration, what the ritual was, how I should behave. Because many times years ago, when I was still a politician, I had made a terrible faux pas with a very orthodox Jewish rabbi who I had extended my hand in greeting to, not realizing, well, you know, and
you could have gone in for a hug and a kiss.
Yeah, so I didn't go that far. I was quite reserved. And he sort of leapt away from me, and I thought, oh my God, I've offended this man. So then I was, you know, I was very careful to kind of brush up on the protocol side. So this was, as I said, this taught me so much. And it also, like my kids, who we've always had, I mean, our home is a definitely no anti-Semitic joke area forever. You know, we feel very strongly about this, whether we had this connection with New York or not. But I remember
you know, and your daughters, I don't know if they still live there, but you know, I'm a little bit friendly with your daughter and son-in-law, and they live, when I did visit them in their place, and they live directly across from Pauline, from the museum.
Yeah, they do. They literally overlook it. But my daughter and my son-in-law were visiting, and my daughter said, you know, I'd love to go to a Friday night service, you know, in the synagogue. And I said, well, we've got plenty to choose from. So I called around some friends, and a friend of mine, Patty, said, yeah, I'm not terribly observant, but, you know, Patty Kenner. Yeah, Patty Kenner said, why don't you come to Friday night service with me? So my daughter was thrilled, but our youngest son, Henry, said, seriously? We're in New York, it's Friday night, and we're going to synagogue? He said, Mom, we're not even Jewish. I said, I know we're not Jewish, but this is good. It's going to expand your cultural horizons. He said, who are we going with? I said, Patty. He said, who's Patty? I said, she's a really nice Jewish lady. He said, how old is she? I said, oh. He said, we're going with an elderly Jewish lady to synagogue on Friday night. You know, like you're a kid, you want to be out in the clubs in Manhattan. So anyway, we went. And, you know, we went to, I think it was near Central Park, the synagogue. I remember there was a rabbi, she was Korean. Oh,
you went to Central. You went to Central synagogue.
I went to Central.
Rabbi Angela Buchdahl, who's amazing. She's amazing. She's a cantor and a rabbi. She's amazing.
Wow. I mean, God, it was all happy clappy. I mean, it was brilliant.
Yeah.
So suddenly, so, you know, Henry's eyes sort of went, whoa, I said, this is amazing. So Patty was explaining, you know, about, you know, the whole services. And then he'd been trying to get out of the dinner beforehand, but then he said, no, I'm game now for the dinner. But, you know, he said, is it going to be sort of really kosher? And I don't know. I said, I don't know what it's going to be like. But Patty took us to an amazing Italian restaurant.
Yeah, you're doing all right. If you're going to dinner with Patty, it's never going to be a bad thing.
So if Patty's watching, we have fond memories of that fantastic dinner. And, you know, it just goes to show that especially for younger people, there is nothing better than actually, I mean, this is the fantastic stuff that you do, that you actually bring it over kids from Israel, from the United States, who have maybe some image of Poland. And then they come here and they meet Polish people of their own age. They go to Kazimierz in Krakow, they go to Polin, and they make friends here. There's nothing beats personal connections, nothing beats personal experience. So all the things that you do in this respect, they are fantastic, and it goes both ways, you know. So
absolutely. There are so many preconceptions, which, you know, when you're doing, you know, what you're doing, which is representing Poland on a national level, we're doing what I'm doing, which is traveling around the U.S. and informally, to some degree, representing Poland and answering all the same questions. And Poles, you know, this, you know, it's maybe obvious to us, but, you know, if you're representing many other countries in the world, there aren't such strong, from a Jewish perspective, almost nowhere else in the world are there such strong preconceptions about the country.
Yeah.
right? If you say I'm representing Malta, people just go, "Where's Malta?" But
Yeah,
Poland,
Malta.
everybody's an expert on Poland. Everybody knows everything about Poland, and it's difficult, which is why it's such a, for us, and especially dealing as I'm very involved in New York, and we're doing so much of our work in New York and fundraising and all this, and a lot of, we have, I'm sure, a lot of the same friends, as we see with Patty, but how important that work is, and the work with the consulate, to be able to work together to help distill, get rid of those stereotypes and help show people what's really going on. I always thought it was interesting that when we talk about Polonia, in many ways we don't usually, Polonia, for people who don't understand, is like Polish diaspora is called Polonia, but it's usually not inclusive of Jews. So you would say, oh, Polonia in the United States, but you're not talking about the Jews, although, or when they talk about the most Polish city in the world outside of Poland, they say Chicago, and I would say, well, percentage wise, it would be Tel Aviv, because you have 1/3 of the city, half this, Polish, something like 60% of the Jews in the world have Polish roots, but we don't really talk about it. It's almost like in some ways, the structure of the way we think is that Jews and Poles are separate, even when they're outside of Poland.
And that's sad. And I mean, I also lived very close to a Polish town, Tarnów, which was, predominantly Jewish before the war. And there's very little left here of the Jewish culture, but we do have one guy Adam Bartosz, who is you probably know him as well, and he's been very much involved. So there's a Jewish cultural center. We have Jewish music here as well, and
we have the Bima, which is a beautiful.
We have the Bima, and
beautiful.
So we take part in everything that is organized on now. I mean, this is just from, not because I'm here in an official capacity and I have the duty to do this. I mean, this is just something that we actually enjoy. So, I mean, Jewish cuisine that, I learned to make matzo ball soup. And so, so I can make a mean matzo ball. I can make a mean matzo ball.
I'm sure I'm sure you can. I want to
talk because I can cook as well as do diplomacy.
Of course, we're gonna get. I want to also talk to you about, before we talk about the vinegar, which I'm intrigued by. It's sitting here next to me, and it's like in the corner of my eye. These two beautiful bottles, amazing color of the vinegar. But about your recent work as a monitor of the election, we're also amazed. I think just about everybody, most people I know, were watching yesterday with tears this amazing scene of Biden and Harris being inaugurated. So you, as an official monitor of the U.S. election recently, first of all, what does that mean? What does one do? How does one monitor an election?
Oh, it's an enormous.
What's the result? Like, in other words, I know what I think, but and anybody who's reasonable and sane thinks, but maybe give us talk for a few minutes about what it means to monitor an election and what you saw and what this. I mean, because this is not only any election to monitor. This was nuts.
No, this was the election. I mean, the OSCE has done some now probably 400 election observation missions. And my colleagues who work in the secretariat of the office that deals with election observation, they told me that there had never been an election like this. I mean, in terms of the political temperature, in terms of, because we had COVID, we had the political temperature, and then we had something which was really unheard of in Western democracies, where we had a candidate who was actually questioning the very process. This is not something, I've observed in Turkmenistan, I've observed in Kazakhstan, no surprises there. I've observed really well-run elections in Cyprus, a really well-run election in Armenia, a very decent election in Serbia, already under COVID times, and then this one lands. Then I get this one, okay. So this is the biggest. I mean, in terms of media exposure, some days I was giving 7 interviews back to back. And it was like, Voice of America, Washington Post, The Atlantic, then Al Jazeera TV, then BBC World. I didn't know whether I was coming or going. So to observe an election like this, the mission was smaller than we had anticipated because of COVID. Because for example, in Kazakhstan, I had over 1,000 people working for me on an election.
Wow.
Yeah, it's big. Because then you had like maybe 400 internationals, you had interpreters, drivers, the whole entourage, assistants. It becomes a really big operation. The US one would have been barring interpreters and drivers, which we don't have in the United States, but it would have been a mission of several hundred people. Okay, so actually it was more like a couple of hundred people in the end, spread out. We covered 30 of the states, so we had to choose them in terms of choosing red and blue states, battleground states. You know, we wanted a good spread geographically, politically. We were also observing, and states where we knew what the outcome would be. That doesn't mean we didn't want to observe the process. And we were there at the end of September already, following, the whole you can't really follow the whole pre-election period in the United States. You need to be there for the Iowa caucus, which is a little bit of a long mission.
2 years.
Yeah, or actually, they're already talking about midterms in 2 years' time already on CNN today. So, but realistically, we were there when we arrived. Actually, Pennsylvania had already started in-person voting, early in-person voting. We were following the postal votes. We were talking with the political parties. There was a lot of stuff going through the courts. The system is, for those who are not familiar with the American electoral system, it's very decentralized. It's 50 states, all have their own rules and regulations. Just a very loose federal framework. Crazy amounts of money being spent on this campaign. And then, of course, you have this, where we were following the media, not only the mainstream, but we were following as much as we could the social media. And, there was really amazing things being said on Twitter and Facebook. So we were picking up on the hate speech there, on the blatant undermining of the process. Okay, so we were following this. Were people, were their ballots being dumped into garbage cans? Yes, we had one postal worker, I think in Texas, who dumped his mailbag with empty ballots, together with people's, utility bills or something. I think he was having a bad day, but that was retrieved. And to sum up, the day after the election, when we had when we had our press conference summing up, at that stage, we had not found any systematic cases of electoral fraud in the United Kingdom, but in the United States. And then, so then, of course, it comes down to the courts, because everybody has the right to challenge. And we had some 60 challenges in the US court, barring, I think, 2 cases where there were minor infringements, but not of relevance.
I think one was that the people who were Republican observers were standing a few meters farther back than they should have been, and that was the case that they won. One of them, I think, something.
So they hadn't been allowed close enough to the process.
Right.
Okay, but I mean, in terms of substantial allegations, nothing. So actually, the initial assessment we made the day after the election, saying these elections, despite the challenges of COVID, were well run, and I have the greatest respect for the poll workers who were actually really in difficult circumstances with the pressure they were under. When after the election, people were getting death threats, because their details were being posted on social media. We actually, we've been following this election. We followed the Georgia runoffs for the Senate. Of course, remotely now. We were already all back home. And so yesterday we had the inauguration. The election is well and truly over, but my job actually is not done yet, because we are now finalizing our final report and recommendations, and we will have a whole series of recommendations for the US authorities, for the new administration now, which we hope will address some of the issues that actually might help to, calm fears for the future, where people feel that maybe laws were changed because of COVID. We can see whether some of those things actually warrant being put into the statute books on a permanent basis. Maybe some things need to be done in a more orderly fashion. So we will actually be coming with our recommendations now in a few weeks, I think. And COVID permitting, I would very much like to go. It is normally the case that a head of mission would go back and present them in person to the administration. So I might be back, but it all depends. I mean, really, it's all down now to, quarantine and travel restrictions. And I mean, even traveling back in September, I needed sort of special dispensation from the State Department, because as not a green card holder, not a diplomat, and not a US citizen, I would be barred from entering the United States because of COVID measures. So so my job's not done yet. And
wow, what a thing. I mean, to think that, you know, it's just, I don't know, to me that there's a stain on the United States because of Donald Trump and what he did, and just to the last minute trying to tear it all down and burn down, really, you know, tear down the pillars of democracy, which is a peaceful transfer of power, and getting people to question the system, to me, is beyond despicable, and something that we would be, you know, in my American point of view, is something that we would be saying, oh, those poor people in Turkmenistan, and the guy, you know, the president who wins 102% of the vote, or, you know, it was almost, you know, seeing what happened in the United States of America was just beyond. So it's fascinating.
I mean, you know, I mean, the OSCE's observations are absolutely like sort of non-partisan, non-political. So I never, you know, people said, you know, who are you rooting for in this election? And I said, the electors, you know, the elector, you know, the voters, that's who I'm rooting for. But, you know, this was unusual because the incumbents' actions and words were actually having an impact on the process. So in a way, politics encroached into our observation, and it's not as if we can ignore what we have seen. And just looking, I mean, you know, my office was actually on Pennsylvania Avenue at the Ronald Reagan building, which is closer to the White House. But, you know, on that, you know, literally my office overlooked Freedom Plaza, you know, where all the, you know, demonstrations would gather on a Saturday morning. And when I looked at Washington, when I looked at everything closed down, I looked at a Google map, you know, everything closed, I thought, you know, the city was already quite sad and empty when I was there. And I thought, you know, people live in this city. It's a really fantastic city. Not as, you know, not as lively and as exciting as New York, but it has a majesty about it. It has, you know, it has this gravitas. And I thought, you know, what's going on? You know, 25,000 National Guard troops, you know, it did look like a war zone, and it was very sad. So, but I always believed, you know, I had faith actually in the independence of the judiciary. I never doubted that those people, whoever they were appointed by, at the end of the day, they knew what they were appointed to do.
Absolutely.
So I know when President Biden actually congratulated the judiciary for its work, that is something that we echo as well in our report, that the judiciary really, and civil society,
people were pleasantly surprised by the judiciary here, which could have gone very, very differently. I mean, you know, I don't want to get into the whole thing with Trump, but to me, Trump is Trump, and there will always be people like that. And my issue as you know, as a global citizen is really the enablers, the people that know better, that a lot of people have to turn a blind eye to certain things for someone like that to gain power and stay in power. So hopefully the system was tested, but the system held, and we have a new president, and it's a new day for America, and hopefully for the world. But let's talk about something else important. Vinegar. Tell me. So you're an Oxford educated businesswoman, diplomat, politician, and you have now gone back to the farm.
Yep, back to the farm.
You are on the farm making vinegar. So talk to me a little bit about the Vinegar Project, the company.
Okay. So actually, when I came back, when I came back from New York, I started before I got involved with doing. I mean, when I'm working with the OSCE on these missions, you know, it's a couple of missions a year, so it doesn't take up so much time. It's maybe 4 months of my year in terms of being posted somewhere and actually sitting down and then working on the reports. So I was actually, I'm teaching young diplomats at the European Academy of Diplomacy in Warsaw. And I also have some other projects, European projects and sort of pro-democracy projects. I've done things in Moldova, for example. And so, but, you know, come the summer, there's nothing to do. And I'm in the Polish countryside with a lot of farmland that, you know, I acquired when I arrived in Poland. And when I was in New York, I discovered Bragg's apple cider vinegar, which I really liked. And when I came back to Poland, I thought, I found, I had all my American recipe books and I needed some apple cider vinegar. So I thought, well, yeah, somebody must make like raw apple cider vinegar in Poland. And guess what? When I Googled it, it came up that the raw apple cider vinegar I could buy in Poland was made by Bragg's. And I thought, this is crazy. Poland is one of the largest apple producers in the world. Okay. I have my own apple orchard and I'm going to be importing apple cider vinegar from the United States? No way. So I made some for myself. Literally for my own use. And then, this is the old story. My friends came to dinner. They said, oh, this is really great. What did you make the salad dressing out of? And I said, oh, they said, have you got some spare? I said, yeah, I have a bottle. I said, you should be selling this stuff. And then I thought, yeah, maybe I should be selling this stuff. So I set about teaching myself everything about vinegar. Everything. I went to Vienna. I visited vinegar makers in Vienna because there's a company there that uses this very old-fashioned Orleans method of making vinegar. It's you make what you would call in the US hard cider or wine, and then from that you inject bacteria, mother of vinegar, and you make vinegar. And so I actually now have 21 varieties of vinegar, not just apple. Yeah, but I don't know what you've got there. You've got raspberry and
I have raspberry and Schlieveck and plum.
Yeah, and you have a plum in which there is some smoked Polish plum, which is like a really nice one, great with beetroot, that one. Ooh. So, but then I started thinking about, I've got apples, I've got pears, I've got plums, I've got people around me producing other stuff. And a lot of the vinegars we make, the really popular ones, are actually from foraged wild fruits like hawthorn berries, rose hips, that grow literally around me here in the beautiful southern Poland. And so sometimes, I'm the whole of the OSC, they all know I'm a vinegar maker. And whenever I go on missions, I always go and try and find new inspirations. But at the end of the day, I make stuff very local.
But it seems to me, this is like very professional. This isn't just for you and your friends. You are selling the vinegar. You have this.
Oh, no. I export. No, Jonathan, this goes to Scandinavia. I export to Scandinavia now. I actually sell abroad. So it's become a kind of sort of niche, a nice little niche business. And I really enjoy it because I get to meet, really good chefs here in Poland and abroad and talk vinegar. So
I'm very excited to try it. And Kasia, my wife, the chef, is even more excited to try it. She can't wait. She knows all about the vinegar. I've seen it before. She showed it to me. She knows and sees it through Facebook and everything. I have a couple more questions. One is latka or hamantash? Are you on team latka or team hamantash? Do you know what the latka, the płatki ziemniaczane?
Yeah.
Are these triangular cookies that we eat on Purim with the filling inside? So I always ask everybody because there's like a debate.
Oh no, I'm definitely with the Hanukkah dish.
Oh, the latkes.
Yeah, the latkes.
Płatki ziemniaczane.
Yeah.
And I always ask everybody what their 3 favorite films are.
My 3 favorite films. Oh my goodness. Oh gosh, I don't want to say.
Everybody hates the question.
Yeah, everybody hates the question, and then I'll probably say something. My goodness, that's a really difficult one because there are. Yeah, and I'm not going to say what everybody says, like The Godfather and Forrest Gump and what comes at the top of the. You've really floored me. Just look at this. You're so sneaky. You should have given me a heads up for that.
I should say that I've asked 42 people or 40, whatever this.
So you've floored you've floored every one of them.
Every one of them. Only one person was like, "Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that." Only one.
No, absolutely. Now I can't even think of a film. Pretty much everything that Netflix makes at the moment, like everybody's just watching stuff there. But no, I don't know. Maybe, actually some things that I really like. Oh, no, now I've got it. Okay, so it's actually a play that was made it's a book that was a play that was made into a film.
We'll take it.
Absolutely my all-time favorite playwright is Alan Bennett, Yorkshireman Alan Bennett. Mm-hmm. And The Lady in the Van, which is about a curmudgeonly old lady who lives in the van, in a van, you know, a car on Alan Bennett's drive, and this is a true story, is amazing. And it's so The Lady in the Van. It's a BBC production. The Lady in the Van. There you go. And that, you see, probably that's not going to be the Forrest Gumps and the Godfathers and all of that. And if you haven't seen it, it actually, if you haven't listened,
I promised I will. I promise I will do it. And I will report back on the film and on the Vinegar.
Yes, but definitely on the film as well. And anything that Alan Bennett reads himself, because he has this amazing, I mean, you know, you don't get British accents because it's like American. I mean, I can tell a New Yorker now from.
I can tell the difference if I'm like in the Scouse versus this versus that. I'm all right.
But he's Yorkshire, and I actually come from what was Lancashire. So, you know, a lot of rivalries between Lancashire and
I
Yorkshire.
will tell you that a long time ago in another life, I had a girlfriend from Rotherham. So I know my South Yorkshire. Ula, thank you so much for being. This has been absolutely fascinating, and thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you've told us today. Has been really interesting and fascinating, and thank you as well for the Vinegar. I'm so excited. I will report back on the Vinegar to you.
Okay, and thank you, best to you and to Kasia and to all friends who are watching live or who will be watching while in the next few days. Virtual hugs to all of you, and stay safe, stay healthy, get your jabs so we can all really have not just virtual but real hugs and face-to-face meetings as soon as possible.
Oh wait,
all
I
the
should
best
tell you one thing that somebody who's watching on Facebook said. I saw Lady in the Van at the Roslyn, New York Theater. So there you go.
Yes, there you go. So they can probably confirm, watch the BBC production if you don't get to see the play. Nothing in theaters at the moment. So I think
exactly. Be well, Ula. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Logging off now. All the best. All the best. Bye-bye.